Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey story time. Although this is not a Bigfoot story, when I read the account, I couldn't resist not telling it. The Navajo Skinwalker stories have been told as legend or myth in recent years, but are they? There are some of these accounts that may make one believe otherwise. All of her life, Frances T. has seen things, heard things, and felt them. Born into a family of sensitives, this was rather normal. In my family, you were considered odd if you didn't experience abnormal things, Frances says. We never talked much about our experiences or our feelings about them. We just accepted them as normal, which, in fact, to us, they are. But nothing could have prepared her family for what they encountered on the dark, desolate road in Arizona 20 years ago. A mysterious and traumatizing event that haunts them to this day. Frances's family had moved from Wyoming to Flagstaff, Arizona in 1978, shortly after high school graduation. Sometime between 1982 and 83, 20-year-old Frances, her father, mother, and younger brother took a road trip back to Wyoming in the family pickup truck. The trip was a vacation to visit with friends in and around the old hometown. The only member of the family not present was her older brother, who was in the Army and stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The course along Route 163 took them through the Navajo Indian Reservation and through the town of Kayenta, just south of the Utah border, in the magnificent Monument Valley Navajo Tribal Park. Anyone who has lived in Arizona for any length of time knows that the Indian Reservation can be a beautiful, if harsh, place for non-natives. Many strange things happen out there, Frances says. Even my friend, a Navajo, warned us of traveling through the reservation, especially at night. Along with the warning, however, her Native American friend blessed the family, and they were on their way. The trip to Wyoming was uneventful, but the trip back to Arizona along the same route more than justified the warning from Frances's friend. It still gives me goosebumps, she says. To this day, I have major anxiety attacks when I have to travel through the North Country at night. I avoid it at all costs. It was a warm summer night, about 10 p.m., when the family's pickup was headed south on 163, about 20 to 30 miles from the town of Kayenta. It was a moonless night on this lonely stretch of road, so pitch black that they could only see just a few feet beyond the headlights. So dark that closing their eyes actually brought relief from the fathomless black. They had been driving for hours with Frances's father at the wheel, and the vehicle's passengers had long ago settled into quiet. Frances and her father sandwiched her mother into the truck's cab, while her brother enjoyed the night air in the back of the pickup. Suddenly, Frances's father broke the silence. "We have company," he said. Frances and her mother turned around to look out the back slider window. Sure enough, a pair of headlights appeared over the crest of the hill, then disappeared as the car went down, then reappeared. Frances commented to her father that it was nice to have company on this stretch of road. If something went wrong, neither vehicle and its passengers would be alone. Thunder began to rumble from the vast cloudy sky. The parents decided that their son should come in the cab before he got soaking wet from any rain that might fall. Frances opened the slider window and let her little brother crawl in, squeezing between her and her mother. Frances turned to close the window and again noticed the headlights from the following car. "They're still behind us," her father said. "They must be going to either Flagstaff or Phoenix. We'll probably meet them in Kayenta when we stop to fuel up." Frances watched as the car's headlights crested another hill and began to descent until it disappeared. She watched for them to reappear, and watched. They didn't reappear. She told her father that the car should have crested the other hill again, but hadn't. Maybe they slowed down, he suggested, or pulled over. That was possible, but it just didn't make sense to Frances. Why in the hell would a driver slow down, or worse yet, stop at the bottom of a hill in the middle of the night, with nothing around for miles and miles? Frances asked her father. You'd think they'd want to keep inside of the car in front of them in case anything happened. "People do weird stuff when they're driving," her father replied. So Frances kept watching, turning around every few minutes to check for those headlights, but never did reappear. When she turned to look one last time, she noticed that the pickup was slowing down. Turning back to look out the windshield, she saw that they were rounding a sharp bend in the road, and her father had slowed the truck to about 55 miles per hour. And from that moment, time itself seemed to slow down for Frances. The atmosphere changed somehow, taking on an unworldly quality. Frances turned her head to look out the passenger window when her mother screamed and her father cried out, "What the hell is that?" Frances didn't know what was happening, but one hand instinctively reached over and held down the button for the door lock, and the other tightly grabbed the door handle. She braced her back against her small brother and held firmly onto the door, still not knowing quite why. Her brother was now yelling, "What is it? What is it?" Her father immediately flipped on the interior cab light, and Frances could see that he was petrified. "I've never ever seen my father that scared in my whole life," Frances says. "Not when he came home from his tours in Vietnam, not when he came home from special assignments, not even when someone tried to firebomb our house." Frances's father was as white as a ghost. She could see the hair on the back of his neck standing straight out like a cat's, and so was the hair on his arms. She could even see the goosebumps on his skin. Panic was filling the small cab. Frances's mother was so frightened that she began shouting in her native Japanese in a high, squeaky voice as she frantically wrung her hands. The little boy just kept saying, "Oh my God." As the pickup sped around the bend in the road, Frances could see the shoulder dropped off deeply into the ditch. Her father slammed on the brakes to prevent the truck from swerving into the ditch. As the pickup slowed to a stop, something leapt out of the ditch at the side of the truck, and now Frances could see clearly what had started the panic. It was black and hairy and was eye level with the passengers in the cab. If this was a man, it was like no man Frances had ever seen. Yet despite its monstrous appearance, whatever this thing was, it wore man's clothes. It had on a white and blue checkered shirt and long pants, I think jeans, Frances testifies. Its arms were raised over its head, almost touching the top of the cab. The creature remained there for a few seconds, looking into the pickup, and then the pickup was past it. Frances could not believe what she had seen. It looked like a hairy man, or a hairy animal in man's clothing, she says, but it didn't look like an ape or anything like that. Its eyes were yellow, and its mouth was open. Although time seemed frozen and distorted in this moment of fantastic horror, it was all over within a few minutes. The headlights, her little brother coming into the cab, and the thing. By the time the family reached Kayenta for gas, they had finally calmed down. Frances and her father climbed out of the pickup to check the side of the truck to see if the creature had done any damage. They were surprised to see that the dust on the side of the truck had been undisturbed, and so was the dust on the hood and the roof of the truck. In fact, they found nothing out of the ordinary. No blood, no hair, nothing. The family stretched their legs and rested at Kayenta for about 20 minutes. The car that had been following them never did show up. It's as if the car simply vanished. They drove home to Flagstaff with the cab light on and the door securely locked. "I wish I could say this was the end of the story," Frances says, but it's not. A few nights later, around 11 p.m., Frances and her brother were awakened by the sounds of drumming. They looked out his bedroom window into the backyard, which was surrounded by a fence. At first, they saw nothing but the forest beyond the fence. Then the drumming grew louder, and 3 or 4 men appeared behind the wooden fence. It looked like they were trying to climb the fence, but couldn't quite manage to bring their legs up high enough to swing over, Frances says. Unable to get into the yard, the men began to chant. Frances was so scared, she slept with her little brother that night. Sometime later, Frances sought out her Navajo friend, hoping she could offer some explanation for these strange incidents. She told Frances it was a skinwalker that had tried to attack her family. Skinwalkers are creatures of Navajo legend, witches that can shapeshift into any animal. That a skinwalker attacked them was quite unusual. Frances's friend told her, as it had been a long time since she had heard of any activity about skinwalkers, and they normally don't bother non-natives. Frances took her friend back to the fence where she had seen the strange men trying to climb in. The Navajo woman considered the scene for a moment, then revealed that 3 or 4 skinwalkers had visited the house. She said that they wanted the family, but could not gain access because something was protecting them. Frances was astonished. Why, she asked. Why would skinwalkers want her family? Your family has a lot of power, the Navajo woman said, and that they wanted it. Again, she said that skinwalkers usually don't bother non-natives, but she believed that they wanted the family enough to expose themselves. Later that day, she blessed the perimeter of the property, the house, the vehicles, and the family. We haven't been bothered by skinwalkers since then, Frances says. Then again, I haven't been back to Kayenta. I have gone through other towns on the reservation, yes, at night, but I'm not alone. I carry a weapon, and I carry protective amulets. What a great story. I just couldn't resist. Creepy, and it'll keep you up late. Do skinwalkers exist? I think maybe in some capacity, yes. More than likely as part of a ritual, but you never know. Perhaps some Navajo natives do carry the power to transform themselves into animals. It certainly would explain a lot. Well, if you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up and share it, please. And thank you for listening.